Do you think the prosecution proved its case?
Remember, there are different charges here, right? There's racketeering charges, there's sex trafficking charges, and there's a charge of transportation for the purposes of engaging in prostitution. Why am I pointing that out? Because the last charge is definitely the strongest one, meaning the one that is probably the easiest for the prosecution to prove. Why? Because all they need is the jury to believe one of the prostitutes who testified saying, I was paid to engage in prostitution and was brought across state lines to do it. In that case, I think that they've got a pretty strong case. When it comes to the other two sets, it's close. It's going to be very close. Again, I think the RICO, the racketeering, going to be the hardest, sex trafficking next, and this one the most likely of a conviction.
Combs did not testify, but the defense not putting on any witnesses at all. What did you make of that?
You know, that tells me that the defense believes that there is enough reasonable doubt that they do not need to put on additional witnesses. Because remember, any additional witnesses also opens them up to additional cross-examination. And there may be information that you do not want them to get into, or it just may not be beneficial for your case. Less is more sometimes, especially with these type of sprawling charges.
And now it's time for the closing arguments. But what does each side need to do? Sean, I'm going to start with you. Take the prosecution for us. What do they need to do in the closing arguments?
So the prosecution really needs to shore up their cases and connect the dots for the jury. When we're talking about this RICO charge, they have to be very clear about who they believe was a part of this conspiracy and the acts that they took to further the conspiracy, along with the underlying predicate crimes. They've done a great job with the transportation for prostitution because that's very clear. We see the bank records, we've seen them testify, we've seen the money move, and we know why they were there. So that charge is there. For the trafficking, that's going to be very hard, but what they have to do is hone in on the idea that these are not acts they would have done but for the force. In the case of Cassie, we know that she was being physically abused. And in the case of Jane, the idea that he was paying her rent and holding that over her head is why she chose to engage in those acts.
Okay, so that's the prosecution.
Yes.
What about the defense, Dan?
Consent and reasonable doubt. Right, that the two key witnesses here were in long-term relationships with him, that they could have left, that they continued to engage with him. That's number one. And number two is going to be the legal standard, right? Is going to be saying, look, they have to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. Look at the technical definitions of these charges. That's not domestic violence. We're talking about racketeering here. We're talking about sex trafficking. That's what they're going to focus on, and in the hope that they say they just don't have it.